It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, folks, today we're going to jump in that gigantic, sharp, interactive board. I want to share my thoughts on Xerox's first quarter. I also want to discuss Xerox's reinvention. You know, the leadership at Xerox has been talking about this reinvention for a couple of years now. They're very loud about it. They're making the market aware. Hey, we understand our core deliverable of print is facing major challenges, being disrupted by digitalization. They get it. And we got to reinvent this company so we can maintain another 100 years, helping our end users, our customers all over the world navigate information, create better business processes to run their businesses more smoothly. That's Xerox, right? It just won't be about a printed page and a copy page, nowhere near the volume it was. Henceforth, we got to reinvent. So without any further ado, let's jump on the board. I want to share my thoughts. The first thing I want to do is read this quote from Xerox's CEO. The evolution of Xerox reinvention aligns our resources in three key areas: improvement and stabilization of our core print business, increased productivity and efficiency through the formation of a new global business services organization, and disciplined execution in revenue diversification. That's the most important part of this quote. The rest of that quote really is permissions to show up when you're reinventing a company. But at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, the most important part of that quote is disciplined execution and revenue diversification, because you can diversify and run the train right off the track. And we've seen some folks do that. You can diversify without the right human capital and processes in place and deliver terrible services to end users. But diversifying with discipline, making sure that not only do you collect revenue in that diversification, but you collect profitability in that diversification, is the hard part. And now I got some great news. Xerox, on their first quarter financials, separated out the revenue in the IT services business along with the profitability. Folks, I'm excited about this. You know, I've been beating on Xerox and the whole damn industry to do this for a long time. If you're going to sell these diversifications, then tell the whole damn world the revenue and the profitability of the diversification. Congratulations, Xerox. I'm super excited about it. I can't wait to share those numbers. And now we have a starting point. And now we can watch the progress. Now Xerox is on the hook. I mean, think about it. You got Wall Street looking at them. The whole world looking at them. How's that diversification going? That should create pressure. And pressure is always good. Pressure usually gets results. And if it's not getting the results you need, guess what? You make some changes with human capital. Ladies and gentlemen, Xerox has been up front with this reinvention. They've shared this. Their CEO shared this at the Vegas meeting. You know, I recently was in South Africa where the CEO was talking with Altron's Xerox dealers all over Africa, sharing this reinvention story. Xerox has had to make a lot of painful decisions. Xerox has had to do things that they should have done a long time ago. The leadership's doing these things. Not easy. Disrupting the status quo never is. But when I think about Xerox's reinvention journey, I start thinking about all the Xerox dealers, all the Xerox partners. You know, the CEO in Vegas, when he spoke, said that they want to have 80% partners to 20% direct. That means they're going to get more partners. That means they're going to look at the partners they have. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll be honest with you. The partners, whether they're Xerox partners or anybody else's partner, everybody has to go through a reinvention. Everybody's reinvention, everybody's diversification might be a little bit different. But everybody has to go through a reinvention. And I want to ask all of the Xerox partners a question. What are you doing to reinvent your business? Both partners have to be in the same mindset. The dealers and Xerox have to be carving out their puzzle pieces to fit together, because the puzzle pieces of the past aren't going to fit together much longer. And if the partner, the dealer, doesn't recarve their puzzle piece, it will not fit in Xerox's new puzzle piece. Because I assure you, Xerox is carving a new puzzle piece. So what are the partners doing for the reinvention? How are you looking at your geography? How are you looking at your operational simplification processes? What are you doing there? How are you looking at commercial optimization, your route to market? How are you looking at your revenue mix? How are you going to shift? How are you going to make sure that that new diversification brings you not only revenue but profit? We have to make sure that we realign our puzzle piece. And when industries are disrupted, I don't think enough people realign those pieces, and that causes them the problem. They don't fit in reality anymore. They don't fit with their partner anymore. Separation. So folks, it's not easy, whether you're Xerox or whether you're Xerox's partner. But at the end of the day, you can't allow Xerox to reinvent past you. And Xerox, you have to make sure those partners, as they're rebuilding their puzzle pieces, you're helping them. That means you got to communicate, probably more than you've ever communicated before. Because it does work both ways. But reinventions are brutal. They're tough. And there will be pain with the partner and Xerox. But I think everybody working together needs to realize there is going to be some pain. But let's get through it. And let's carve out those pieces. Let's look at the revenue. Top line revenue for the quarter was $1.46 billion. Down. Of course it's down because print's declining. I mean, that's the reality, folks. Let's look at the operating margin, 1.5% for the first quarter. You know, I got to circle this. And, I'm sure that Xerox doesn't need me to warn them, but that's the worst quarterly operating profit they've had in a long damn time. I went all the way back to 2018. So the world's going through some pretty crazy times right now. And there's a lot of things that are affecting businesses and the way businesses make decisions, the tariffs, a lot of things. But at the end of the day, those things are sitting on top of a company determined to reinvent themselves. And this is going to be a tough road to hoe, and it's going to be really, really important for Xerox and everybody playing to make sure you pay attention to your profitability. That's why you need to have discipline to make profitability, so when you have these hiccups, you can kind of absorb them. And now I want to bring up that fantastic news, and I'm going to get into some more details on this. But print and other, $1.3 billion. IT solutions, $164 million the first quarter. Ladies and gentlemen, this is super exciting, but it gets better because they really get into the profitability and stuff. Are you ready? Let's dig a little bit deeper. First thing I want to do is share the printing revenues. So let's look at the printing revenue for the equipment for the first quarter, $284 million. The post sales was $1,010 million. Total revenue was $1,294 million in the print business. Just the print business. If you look at those installs over here on the board, I got to tell you something. I got excited. I wrote it in red. Proof the A4 revolution has been won, and A4 won it, not A3. Remember, they were beating up A3. They went to war with A3. Remember the A4 revolution? It won. I've seen this from a lot of the other major players in our space showing the placements of A4, the placements of A4. Well, guess what happens? Well, when you replace an A3 with an A4, you know what you do? Well, you lose a bunch of revenue. And yeah, you'll get some supply revenue. But guess what? There's not a damn thing you can do about it because you can't force the customer to buy what they don't want. And when the marketplace moves to what the customers want, the smart players give the market what they want and they figure out how to control their costs to give them what they want. The idiotic players, you know what they do? They continue to overspec and oversell and go against the grain of reality. And sooner or later, guess what? The end users say, enough of you. Print will decline. Its service contracts will decline. Its supplies going in those machines will decline. One of the stabilization, I believe, one of the stabilization components that Xerox took around print, well, was to go get Lexmark. I mean, look, I said this before, but you got players out there that have completely ignored Lexmark. I mean, Xerox not the only one that could have bought them. But Xerox looked at, you know what, if we're going to stabilize the core deliverable of print, what if we could grab a company out there and throw that myth into our myth and then grab back a whole bunch of synergies to bring back some profit dollars, well, we continue to reinvent into other services. The Lexmark deal. We'll see how all this pans out. I'm not going to get into too much of this. I did notice that the OEM and other business for Lexmark in 2024 grew quite a bit. That was interesting to me. In 2023, it was $281 million, and in 2024, it was $435 million. In 2023, I'm thinking people stopped buying from Lexmark, right? I mean, there was a YouTuber out there making the whole world aware that Lexmark was owned by Nine Star, and we all know Nine Star was that PRC that got banned by the Department of Homeland Security. Henceforth, Lexmark struggles, right? We'll see what Xerox does with Lexmark. There's still a lot of questions I want answered around this, and as time goes on, I'll get those answers. But the first thing that has to happen is they got to close up that deal. We'll see where that ends. Let's talk about this IT solutions business. This is exciting to me. So in the IT solutions business, they talk about products. The product sales for the first quarter were $105 million, and services were $58 million. 56% of IT revenues are services. 44% are products. That's a high percent of products. When you look at some IT services companies out there, you'll see that their products portion of the revenue is about, it could be 15 cents to 25 cents on the dollar. And here with Xerox and IT Savvy, it's 44. But in all reality, I think that number will always be pretty high, because Xerox, being a major global player, will have the ability one day, and probably even now, to sell millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of commodity computer hardware into accounts, because they have the accounts. The services piece will be a little different. You know, now I will say this, they talked about how they had 20 IT solution deals with more than 20 million of signing value, and contract value more than $1 million. If you do the math on that, that's $17K a month. If those contracts are 60 months, it's $28K if they're 36 months. So it looks like they have the ability there at IT Savvy to go out in a marketplace and capture high revenue IT service contracts. I want to see a whole lot more of those. I'd love to know the persona of those customers. I'd love to know the mix of what that contract value was. But right now, 56% of the IT services revenues are services, and 44% are products. So that's a pretty good swing. And now if you look at the margin, so they got a margin of 17.1%, segment profit of 3.1%. So this is great. So their IT services, they're showing that margin of 17.1%. And I think that's because 44% of that revenue is coming from products, which are probably very, very low margin. Or they're selling software. And when you're reselling software applications, kind of low margin. So we'll see. But I think that number in margin's got to pick up a lot. It'd be nice to get that margin up to double digits in the IT services business. The only way they're going to do that is to really move upstream in these services, to have the ability to go out and sell fee-based assessments, to do cybersecurity at a whole nother level, to do consultancy work. We'll see where all this goes. But Xerox being a global player, they'll have an opportunity to move a lot of products. They'll have an opportunity to sell a whole lot of services too. I just hope that they choose wisely in the services they sell, and more importantly, who they sell them to. They talk about how in 2024, they had a 10% of their revenue was in the IT services, digital services space. By the end of 2025, they want that to be 20%. And folks, the only thing they did say is that if the Lexmark deal goes through, then that's going to change a little bit, because they're going to add a bunch of Lexmark revenue. But at the end of the day, Xerox, I'll tell you, I would not be focusing on the revenue mix as much as I'd be focusing on the profitability of that new deliverable IT services. Because if you focus on making sure you got the right profitability, when you get that revenue mix you want, it'll be a massive home run. You go to IT Savvy's website, they do it all, ladies and gentlemen. And it's just going to be about how they scale the current stack or the new stack, which will be a challenge. That's the challenge. How do you scale this stack? How do you go from this IT services company, based on that revenue I just shared with you, what is that, close to $600 million a year business in IT services? And how do you get that to $1 billion? How do you get that to $2 billion? How do you scale that profitably? What's the stat going to be? What's the customer profile going to be? Here's something interesting. I go to John Bruno, and that, John Bruno, the President Chief Operating Officer over there at Xerox, and I look at the, used to be CEO and President of IT Savvy, Manu Ganda, and guess what? These folks have been working together. This is interesting. They both were part of Aon from 2013 to 2020. They were both there. When I look at the leader that's heading up Xerox's IT services company, well, guess what? He was at Xerox for 9 years and 6 months as a division vice president. And then he went to IT Savvy, became the chief executive officer. He knows Xerox. He knows what it was in the past. I think he knows where all the skeletons are in the closet. And here he is now running their IT services business. And his sidekick over there, that president and COO, well, they've got a relationship. They worked together before. This is kind of important. During reinventions, it's important to build teams that trust each other, to build teams that can navigate through turbulence together. This is pretty interesting to me. I want to talk a little bit about the decline, because a lot of people talk about Xerox's decline, and I think I've shared this before, but I want to do a little bit of recap on this, because, folks, I've got to tell you something. Xerox is having its damn challenges. There's no damn doubt about it. One of the reasons I want them to get the hell off the stock market. But everybody else is having challenges too. Xerox is the largest footprint delivering print products and services to end users in the world right now. That's it. That's a fact. Let's look at HP. The Xerox decline from 2011 is 11%. The HP decline from 2011 to 2021, or from 2021, is 14%. Yes, HP has declined a lot more than Xerox since 2021. I've shared this before when I go through HP's financials. Not only is HP declining, but HP is declining in their future. Because we all know that print's going to continue to decline. And the print business over there at HP had declined. From 2021, it was a $2.8 billion decline for HP in print business. And ladies and gentlemen, in the personal systems, it's an $8 billion decline from the 2022 number. An $8 billion decline. And when you add in that $1.7 billion worth of poly they bought, you can clearly see that HP is declining massively inside that personal systems business. And the reason? Because I believe HP is a commodity. 100%. HP declining its future, personal systems, you've got to ask yourselves why. Numerous acquisitions didn't help HP. Why? Because I believe HP is a commodity player. HP does not have a service arm. HP doesn't have the ability to go into end users and help them improve processes. That's what our industry does. That's what dealers all over the world do. They go into businesses and they help businesses navigate information and improve processes to help them run better businesses. And at one point in time, it was print and copy was a big part of that process. It's changing. This is why I think HP will go down in history as making the most stupidest decision in the world by not getting together with Xerox, because they would have the footprint to now and go take those commodity products and put them into the marketplace around some services. They blew it. I want to share some things with my friends at Xerox. These are warning signs. Ricoh's been in IT services for a while. If you look at their operating profit, it literally sucks. I've talked about this before. Quarter by quarter, this is 23 and 24. Ricoh's going to end up with 2.4% operating profit for their year, 2024. Xerox ended their year, 2024, at 4.9%. You can clearly see quarter by quarter, Xerox is double the operating profit of Ricoh. But, our industry, the media and analysts, they talk about Ricoh and they talk about all this crazy nonsense, industrial print, we're going to change the world, blah, blah, blah. And IDC just appointed, Ricoh #1 in roll-fed inkjet. Oh, that's going to distract everybody. This is why when I showed that quote in the beginning and I said it takes discipline on the diversification strategy. Here's another thing. This is why I'm so damn excited about Xerox separating out those numbers. If you look at Ricoh, they say they did $4.3 billion in office services and $4.4 billion in office printing and $489 million in other, $9.2 billion, and they had an operating profit of 0.9%. And we don't hear Ricoh talking about trying to reinvent the company. We hear Ricoh talking about how great everything is at Ricoh. Xerox never do this because it's an apparent out of alignment and cost realities. It'll kill you. Another player, our friends over there at Konica Minolta. What a train wreck, disastrous mess. When I went through their big announcement where they had to recalibrate and tell the whole world, oh, by the way, get ready. We're going to show a $368.5 million loss for our year ending March of 2025. The numbers will be out soon, folks. Can't wait to go through them. Basically, 6 straight years of horrific financials. Seriously? Think about all the assets they bought. Xerox, don't do this. It won't be about running around buying up a whole bunch of IT companies and pile them all on top of each other and hope it all works out. It'll be about discipline, delivering the IT savvy stack. You already have the company. Keep that as by itself. Let them grow organically. And I believe you'll have a home run. Let me end with this. I don't see anywhere near the unrealistic optimism we see elsewhere in the Xerox strategy or the Xerox reinvention. I do believe these guys are thinking this thing through. Will they make mistakes? Hell yeah, they will. And I assure you, I'm going to look for them, and I'll point them out to you as we go. But at the end of the day, I don't see them being unrealistically optimistic. I don't see them saying things that are stupid. I see them telling the marketplace. I listen to their earnings calls. They're honest about where they're going. They know they have issues, but they're willing to address it. And folks, on the earnings call that I just listened to, I have to tell you, this is good news. The CEO of Xerox mentioned on that earnings call that if Xerox just implemented IT services into 5% of their current customer base, the upside would be huge. And he's right. You know what he didn't say? He didn't say we're going to sell IT services to all of our 200,000 customers. If Xerox can determine the right customer profile together with the right IT stack, they'll have a home run. They will navigate the future for another 100 years. They will be the organization that delivers and helps end users in businesses all over the world navigate information, create better business processes. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're a dealer for Xerox, I strongly suggest that you start recarving your puzzle so you can fit in Xerox's new puzzle. If you're a dealer and you're not with Xerox, you still need to figure out how you're going to recarve your puzzle, and then who the hell is it going to fit into as the industry changes. Because everybody watching me knows this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck there, and I'll see you all on Monday.